So Japanese grammar has a quirk to it where you have to talk to other people differently based on their relative social status to you. Each of these words carry a high degree of nuance and complexity, which I will pretend to understand so I can continue to sell you the lie. In English, we usually use you, whether we're talking to strangers, family members, or even presidents, depending on party affiliation. But there's one word that is so comically out of date, it's only ever used nowadays as a joke. Of course, I'm referring to MySpace. But also thou. Now, not using this word for a good quarter millennia has made us forget how this word ought to be used and what it means, but after this video, I better not see any of you misuse this word again, or I'll be forced to deal with it and move on. Speaking of moving on, what does thou mean? You, obviously, but it goes deeper. Any self-respecting American, however many are left, should have very vivid, dull memories of high school Spanish if you were lazy, French if you had pretensions of studying abroad, or German if you were a white supremacist. All of which had two ways of saying you. Spanish had tu und usted, French had tu and vous, and German had du und sie. All of these words distinguish between formal and informal relationships, and English had thou and you for the same reason. However, if you have some pattern recognition, you might realize that thou is more similar to these words over here, and that is because thou is actually the informal form. Well, how can this be the case when thou is almost formal to the point of mockery nowadays? Well, the reason may be that in certain religious contexts, such as the King James Bible, thou was used when talking to God, so when thou fell out of everyday use, all that remained was this explicitly reverential usage. Hallowed be thy name, and all that. Now, you may wonder why we stopped using thou, and your guess is as good as mine, so I'm going to say the deep state and set the bar really low for you. Now, words change meaning all the time, so I don't really care that thou is now considered a formal word, but what I can't forgive, and you will need my forgiveness, is getting its grammar wrong. Starting off with conjugations, which English technically still has today, the same way I have a degree. If you don't know, it's how you change the verb in the sentence based on who's doing the action. Modern English only adds an S to the end of verbs done by things in the third person, but if you go back far enough, you'll find it was more fleshed out, and if you go back really far, you'll find it was held. Thou had its own conjugation, which is where you would have to add an ST to the end of your verb, explaining how you got words like dost or makest. Do not confuse these words for the TH conjugation, which was an old way of doing it for the singular third person, explaining words like doth. Now, if you know any German, this might start to feel familiar. It's probably nothing, and to prove it, I'll start distracting you by talking about cases. He, him, his, this sort of thing, changing a word based on its role in the sentence. Subjects, the thing doing the verb, objects, the thing the verb is done on, and possessives, which shall be abolished in the revolution. These used to be a bigger deal in the past, but English did a little trolling and made it so we can use the object whenever it's not right in front of the verb in question. It's why saying it was he sounds more antiquated than it was him, even though they both sound acceptable. But I digress. Point is, this is the reason we also have thee and thy, and also why I should never see you use thee as a subject again, so help me God. Now, again, if you're German, you're probably screaming your lungs out right now, which is expected, but you also want me to point out how similar these words are to the German du, whose cases are du, dich, dir, und dein, and whose conjugations also end in an ST. Once again, who asked? Right, now to make sure you were paying attention, I'm gonna do a quick quiz. Which of these sentences uses thou correctly? Feel free to pause the video and make your guess. Got it? Alright, here's the answer. Now, I could leave you here, like a regular YouTuber who's scared of being a parent, but there's one last thing to touch on. Why we have thine. Well, there are two reasons, actually. Firstly, it serves the same role as yours or mine, thy book, the book is thine. But that's boring, you probably already could have guessed at that. More interestingly, thine is to thy what an is to a. We use it whenever the word after it begins with a vowel. Simple enough, but I'm giving it extra attention here because this rule also once applied to mine, which I'm also giving extra attention because it solved this long-standing mystery I had with the Battle Hymn of the Republic. You know, glory, glory, hallelujah, yeah, that one. Because its opening line was, mine eyes have seen the glory. Another mystery resolved by the whole of my social life I can't seem to stop digging.
This throne is amazing! I can't get over how small you are! I'm huge! I'm trying to laugh, and it's really hard.